Let's jump over to stay on the track, because I'm glad we brought up payments, because I think that was one we were kind of missing on today's show sheet. But I want to go into where you see the other two sectors, and this is going to be AI and DePIN. And I want to kind of drill in on AI, because the one thing that I see and wonder how we're going to have true blockchain AI integration, other than maybe some decentralized product out there for AI compute, is the fact that we have so many new and large companies that are already in the space that are just developing at breakneck speed. What do you see in the terms of development around AI and blockchain? Anything that really surprises you guys?
Yeah, it's very early. That's what's surprising us. But the blockchain space has historically been a little bit ahead in terms of where things could go longer term. We dropped our thesis on the intersection of Web3 and AI before ChatGPT was even announced and launched, and it was sort of due to some work around stable diffusion that got us to understand, the potential benefits of decentralization and open source communities. So a lot of the early data sets that were tagged and used by image generators and other AI solutions actually were born out of open source, Lyore and other communities. So in some ways, we've been thinking about the problem for a long time, and it's been very non-consensus that Web3 will have any role in AI. However, it's the perfect counterweight to everything that's going on in, kind of the Web2 world around AI. And there are some huge advantages that Web3 can offer, mainly around transparency.
Yeah.
And transparency, I think, becomes really important when we start to plug AI into business processes and we stop chatting with AI, through a web browser.
Yeah.
And we can sort of unpack the data pipeline and the things that Web3 can offer to that data pipeline. But it's like a total tale of two worlds right now. Like all our seed stage AI, Web3 AI investments are, very are normal valuations, exciting entrepreneurs that are coming from the Web2 AI space, and they sort of see this non-consensus view, and they want to prepare for it. Whereas everything in Web2 AI is super inflated, super expensive. We're already seeing death of large companies that don't have moats or can't fundraise. So in many ways, we love that people aren't paying attention to that intersection.
Well, do you think it's just a matter of people not really understanding where Web3 AI's roadmap potential is, or do you think they just have no faith in the future of Web3 AI at all?
I think it's an educational gap. We've always discussed that around crypto. What does it really require for you to get excited about it? It requires you to spend time. A lot of people don't allocate time. They either miss the curiosity element, or they're too busy, focused on the problems that are at hand to sort of fill that education gap. And there's not a lot of primary research. This year, we'll see some papers published in mainstream about that intersection, about people who are solving really hard problems. One company, Paralis, that's in our portfolio, is trying to do decentralized training like that and build decentralized models. That was a problem that people did not think was possible, and it requires an unlock in parallelization to make it work and make it efficient. And so we need to tackle a few of these really hard problems to kind of showcase that there's potential. And then, we really need to let the consumers and the developers drive. Do they want that, only being served by the four large, tech giants? Or do we see a world where AI would be much more democratized and accessible?
Yeah, I'm showing an article here on Built-in. Is to your very point, it says there's a small number of tech giants completely dominating the development right now. And if we don't see that, the potential, I think, is and could be devastating for Web3 in general, because when you look at the potential of compute power that's going to be required, over the next decade, this is something we've talked about on many of our shows. Just the amount of power, pure and simple, to be able to feed these data centers And then you look at decentralized compute and the blockchain and you think, well, is there really something here that could help resolve some of that load in the future? Have you seen anything so far? I mean, obviously we've talked about companies like Over, which is doing some decentralized compute for spatial. We're seeing some things like Render, which is obviously for GPU and building graphics analysis on decentralized compute. What about the use case of just, general AI? Have you seen anything that's broken through?
We haven't seen anything that's quote unquote broken through. What we're seeing as kind of the emerging trends are AI implemented for DeFi to drive automation and strategy and strategies. So, can I earn more yield if I'm constantly rebalancing and monitoring all the different lending opportunities out there? And so I think the quick rise in AI agents that we've seen have largely been around DeFi and strategies.
Yeah.
Where we're kind of headed, though, is if you look downstream from the models, there's a huge lack of transparency in the data and customization ability, as well as attribution, right? So people aren't getting paid for their data. We have companies that will like to use AI that will want to customize those data sets to make sure they're not infringing on, potentially copyrighted data, which we haven't seen yet, and that hasn't been resolved. And then upstream of the models, this is where I think Web3 plays a huge role, is verifiability. Okay. So if you have 4 black boxes that are controlled by, the giant tech companies, you don't even really know what model you're using. And you can't verify that. You can't prove that. We haven't even seen, cheap ChatGPT yet, where people are just launching a front end and saying it's XYZ model, right? Yeah. So if we can't verify the inference, then we don't actually know, and we can't control what the AI is doing behind the scenes, and we can't, get comfortable that we can plug that into business processes. And so that kind of transparency, the model guarantees, become really important vectors that need to be solved to, what I think have safe AI and, AI that's incapable of plugging into business processes.
Well, and digital ID, I think, is going to be a big part of this in the future. So we will see integration into this. The likelihood is it may come faster than many people anticipate, especially with the amount of problems that we're seeing already with what AI is capable of for everything from deep fakes to the amount of phishing scams that we continue to see out there. So definitely some opportunities in this area. If there was one category, whether you look at the gaming category for AI, maybe the DePIN category, we'll talk about DePIN in a second, or back to your point, DeFi, or just compute. Is there one area of Web3 that you think might lend itself better to the utilization of some of the tools that could be coming out?
And by tools, are you talking about the Web3 tools that are coming out for people to take advantage of building applications, or this transition from Web2 to Web3?
Web2 to Web3, yeah. Web2 to Web3, because we are seeing a lot of the technology, not necessarily being mirrored, but definitely a lot of the ideas and innovation that are coming from Web2 are somewhat being translated over into some of the Web3 components that we've analyzed and had a chance to interview on. I guess that's the question is what track do you think could be the leader, coming out of this?
I think, one big challenge that Web3 is not solved yet is distribution.
Yeah.
So the beauty of blockchains is they're global language, right? Everyone speaks math. Everyone can plug into them. The amazing thing about a new token launch is it's adopted globally day one.
Yeah.
And that is something we don't see in Web2 tech. Now, the challenge that Web3 is not solved is distribution. So how do you figure out how to get people onto wallets and using decentralized applications in mass? And so far, I'd argue we haven't done that as effectively. A lot of people hold Bitcoin, but not a lot of people control their own Bitcoin. Yep. Therefore, a lot of people don't have, wallets, or if they do, they're very lightweight, kind of afterthoughts. They're not in your hands every day, and you're not, sort of signing transactions on a daily basis.
Right.
Now, some evidence that could change are the folks like Telegram, kind of porting in mini apps, which has been a very successful business for WeChat. Over 1 million mini apps have been born on the WeChat platform, and bringing that over and saying, okay, well, you can build mini apps and you can also leverage infrastructure for blockchain-based transactions.
Yep.
So now there's a new business model where you're not just monetizing attention, you are actually benefiting from transactional revenues and potential. And that's very early, but we need a large distribution player like Telegram that has 1 billion users and many hundreds of millions of daily active users to start to serve up these applications in a very familial format. And I think once we can solve distribution, then a lot more people will come to the opportunity to build applications and start to sort of see that you can leverage new business models and kind of create new things with the addition of blockchain and native digital dollars, whereas we haven't been able to kind of crack that before. But crypto's messy, right? It's like we've had a decade of ground up community development that hasn't been well organized, that hasn't had a clear kind of roadmap on how this all fits together in the future. And that's what's turned people off. But that's where the opportunity is. That's
no doubt.
You don't have Steve, you don't have, CEO of Apple, Microsoft and others, sort of controlling what this roadmap should look like, but it would be great to get their input. What do you guys see? How can you put all this infrastructure together and create something, really interesting? And so we're just at that tipping point of people starting to put the infrastructure together and deliver real use cases.
I think we would have seen a different course for crypto had we had a different C-suite that one went through, the trenches of building when an industry didn't exist. And when you think about early 2000s, late 1990s, those who went through the .bomb and then those who came out of it, because there's clearly a handful of those, whether you look at what we've seen with, Elon Musk and you look at David Sachs, Peter Thiel, many of the PayPal mafia, and then you could go down the line from Larry Ellison to, Benioff, you name the guys, and they've all built and were able to that. That's the problem we have right now in Silicon Valley. We don't have that kind of CEO that is that visionary of being able to build in a category that is literally wide open blue sky right now, which is where crypto is for sure.
And one example of that is, we can give Facebook a hard time, but Mark's vision around what was initially called the Libra project was visionary. It was actually to destroy their near-term, business for that long-term opportunity of controlling the wallet and distribution by saying, let's put all the infrastructure on a blockchain, and then we just need to own, the wallet and the distribution endpoint, which would have been a drastic change to their business model. I don't even think the sell-side equity guys even understood what could have happened there had that project pushed forward. And I'm sad that it didn't, but obviously it leaves the opportunity out there for to revisit it or have someone else, kind of continue to help aid in the distribution challenges by promoting the technology.
Well, and their pivot, when you look at what they've done in AR, VR, their pivot to really go to Meta, I think has been fairly dynamic. And Mark Zuckerberg has talked about this before of opening up to a much more open system. Maybe he has come to reality that this is going to happen. And if you look at even what Jack Dorsey has been able to do, his idea of federated social media, the idea of an open social graph to be able to get out on the blockchain at that time wasn't necessarily a thing, but now it's a possibility. We're starting to see a little bit of activity in that. I'm still questioning whether or not social could do it. I know with TikTok and what Frank McCourt and his team are trying to do of potentially liberate TikTok into an American stack that will have a blockchain basis to it. It'll be interesting to see if that is successful. I know, who else was it? Somebody else just joined his group because it's Alexis Ohanian, who's the former Reddit guy. Mm-hmm. Then you got Jimmy from Mr. Beast, Mr. Wonderful, and there was another new investor. I'll have to get that later. But I've been amazed at how much interest there is. And obviously, Trump is going to probably negotiate with the Chinese on what that's going to look like. Who knows? We'll see.